Good morning, it's Pastor Marty from the Afternoon Drive. It's the weekend edition. Glad to have you joining us today. Well, it was a great week for Trump. Now, you're not going to hear anybody in the mainstream lying legacy corporate corrupt propaganda media describe it that way, but it was a great week for the president. He had the great optics of being able to put the Medal of Freedom on Tiger Woods, and if ever there was a poster child of a famous individual who messed up, paid the price for it, redeemed himself, and made an incredible comeback, that would have to be Tiger Woods. And what did Tiger get backlash over? The fact that he allowed that president to put that medal on him. Yeah. That aside, great week for Trump. Even the polls that are always skewed against Trump still have him now at 46% approval. The Dems got some incredibly bad news in their own polling data that shows that only about 42% of Democrats believe that Donald Trump colluded and committed treason. 42%. 42%. For them to have any legs for impeaching this president, that would have to be more like 62%, 72% among their own. And it's at 86% of Republicans who see no collusion, no treason. They have no legs for impeachment. And the reason Nancy Botox Pelosi keeps hinting at it is she's lost control of her base. She has. And she has to keep saying what she's saying to try to keep them in line. So, not a good week for the Democrats by any stretch of the imagination. Great week for Trump. Yesterday, the Pentagon appropriated $1.5 billion in border wall construction. That gives the president another 100 miles of border on top of what he's already had approved. When bipolar Ann Coulter, sometimes who I affectionately refer to as Ann and Heat Coulter, was out there just absolutely shredding the president, talking about that she could even work for Bernie Sanders because she really doesn't care about that socialism stuff, which proves what I've said for years. She's not a conservative. Politics and her conservative rants, it's a paycheck. That's all it is. This is a gig. If she could have gotten paid on the liberal side of the aisle, she would have. She found the money was on the conservative side of the aisle. That's what she went for. She has no core whatsoever other than she likes to rant and rave about border security, about illegal immigration, because she sells books. That's where her real bread and butter is. Of all the things she's written on, it's the border issue where she makes her money. The president can't help the fact that he had a rhino Congress who wouldn't help him. Then he got handed the Nancy Pelosi Congress, who certainly wasn't going to help him. And then you have the Ninth Circuit, which keeps stepping in and stopping everything that he tries to do. I believe fully that the president's intent, even with the shutdown, etc., it didn't go badly for him. The whole thing was a show, a stall move, and he knew in the back of his mind, I'm going to get this money from the Pentagon. Billions of dollars are given every year to the Pentagon on top of their regular military budget that is absolutely unappropriated. It can be used any way the Pentagon defense chooses to spend it. And who is the commander-in-chief? Oh, that would be the president. So the executive branch has great influence over what the Pentagon spends and where. So the president is going to get that wall built. Now let's get real. We've had a lot of presidents, including, quote, Republican presidents, who promise big on the campaign trail, deliver very little. President Trump has got an incredible success rate at delivering. Is the economy roaring? You better believe it. That's got the Democrats scared. Lowest unemployment in decades. For our minority communities, lowest unemployment ever. The numbers that way are solidly in the right direction. And now you've got more wall being built. This lets the president go into the 2020 campaign cycle clearly getting things done that he said last time on the campaign trail he was going to get done. And so this is in spite of the fact he'd had this dogma of a 2-year witch hunt just hounding him, and finally vindicated. Yes, vindicated. Bob Mueller found absolutely no collusion. William Barr, and it was his purview, no obstruction, and you can't obstruct if there was no crime. And since Mueller said at the heart of it, there is no crime, there's no obstruction. Now, that again, the Democrats just look insane now as they continue to drag on and have multiple other investigations. And this whole going after his tax thing, they look like absolute rejects doing this. The average American, even the average Democratic American, couldn't give a flying flip about Donald Trump and his taxes. And everybody knew that back in the 1980s, early 90s, that some of his businesses tanked, didn't do well. He wrote a book about it. He's been hiding this. We've got this breaking story through the New York Times. He wrote a book about it. It was called The Art of the Comeback. I have the book. I've read the book several times. He fought his way back. He lost a small fortune and gained it back. And these Democrats on Capitol Hill that right now are saying, what a loser, he lost all this money. First of all, none of them have ever made that kind of money. And he lost it and got it back. That's an incredible story. That's the guy I want making deals. Which leads me to another reason why the president had a great week. He didn't get his trade deal with China. Nope. And no deal is better than a bad deal. Let me say that again for you Democrats that are watching this, sipping your morning coffee, wanting to get a chuckle over the conservative ideals that are espoused on channels like mine. No deal is better than a bad deal. I know. You rhino Republicans, you establishment type political followers that like the establishment candidates like the Mitt Romneys and the John effing Kerrys, I get it. You understand that through the years it's been so great to see America sit down at the bargaining table with other nations and then take to the cameras afterwards and try to spin it like they've made this incredible deal. And then in the end we find out we gave up everything, gained nothing, and yet we're taking credit for a great deal. It's why all of our jobs went overseas. It's why our economy tanked, thanks to the Clinton, Bush, Obama, NAFTA agreements. And then, of course, it was John F. Kerry. Hey, we're going to go ahead and let Iran develop nukes, and we're even going to give them the money to do it. It's a great deal. Here comes a president who says, no more of this crapola. It's America first. America first. European nations, you're going to pay your fair share in NATO. And to some of you, and I'm even talking to a couple of members of my own family, who have this idea that there are these socialist utopias around the world, and socialism really works for them, despite the fact that Venezuela is, they're not even a third world country anymore. They're just like, some type of apocalyptic country right now, like you would see in a sci-fi movie that, there's just bands of survivors acting barbaric, trying to make it. But they'll talk about the Scandinavian countries, the Icelands and the and Norway, etc. Well, first of all, none of those countries are actually purely socialist. And number two, think about this. A lot of those countries, even a lot of European countries that dabble in socialism, and look how great it is. People don't have to pay health care. It's just wonderful. Everything's free. They also don't have a military. We have been completely providing their defense for them. And President Trump says, no more. You're going to pay for that service. And you're going to pay correctly. And that's just going to be a token donation. You're going to pay correctly for that. we'll see how some of these countries that give everything away for free, what happens when they actually have to pay to defend themselves. Have a military budget. We'll see. But the president engaging in no deal with China is better than a bad deal. Because all of these so-called, you know, the Pacific Asian Agreement, all these pact, they have always been crapola for us. The president hitting them hard with tariffs, okay. So we're not going to get cheap DVD players and TVs like we were. You know what? We're going to put Americans back to work making DVD players and television sets. So a little crunch right now pays a long-term, longer dividend, and thank you, Mr. President, for settling on no deal rather than a bad deal. In fact, Wall Street responded on Friday. Everything went up. Remember at the beginning of the week, why the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream propaganda media. Wall Street's tanking because of the tariffs the president has threatened on China. Trade talks end this week. The president says no deal, which means the tariffs go into effect. China walks away having gotten nothing. And Wall Street said, let's go, Mr. President, get him. Good week for Trump. Then, of course, there was the fire plug himself, Jerry the Nads Nadler. Now, let me just stop right here for a minute before I go into this. Doesn't he look like one of those dudes, one of those little characters from, remember when Plato used to make, like, you know, the Fuzzy Pumper Barbershop, you know, and you'd have this little fat guy that you would stuff Play-Doh in, and you would press a crank, and like hair would come out of his head, and at the Fuzzy Pumper Barbershop, you would cut his Play-Doh hair off. So you got Jerry Nadler, you know, the Fuzzy Plumper, Adam Schiff and Nadler, the simp and the blimp. I mean, it's just incredible. He walked into it this week, you know, declaring a constitutional crisis. And then not 24 hours later, Nancy Pelosi out there saying, well, we're not in a constitutional crisis yet. And what is this big beef? Well, he wants to read that unredacted Mueller report. It needs to be released. Now, the president wanted the whole thing released, and William Barr basically explained to him, I'm his president. By law, I can't release the whole thing because, you know, grand jury information and the methodology by which our intel community gathers its information, that has to be kept secret. So Nadler demanding to read the whole thing, despite the fact that if he walked out of his office, his chubby little legs took him about 300 feet down the hallway to a special room where there is an unredacted version of the report that members of Congress can sit and read. You never hear the media talk about that. They have access to an unredacted version. We don't have it. President Trump has no problem in letting us have it. I think that's kind of a to the intel community that, you know, you used all these methods against me, against my family, against my administration. I want America to know what you did and how you gathered it. And William Barr, in following the law, says, well, we can't do that. So now you have Jerry the Nads Nadler going to try to take this to court to make that happen. And if it does, then the president gets his wish and we get to see. And it's less than of what we have. We have 99% of the Mueller report. This unredacted version is 1% of the report, and it's a few lines which mount up to about a paragraph worth of material. But again, let the Democrats push for it. If they get it, Trump gets a win on that. And he gets a win even if it doesn't happen, because now you've got members of the Democratic caucuses getting together. Nadler's an idiot. He doesn't know parliamentary procedure. He doesn't really know the law. And the more he goes out there and runs his mouth, we have to provide the cover fire in public, but behind closed doors, they want him gone. Gone, baby, gone. And then the final, I guess you would call it the cherry on the sundae, that makes it a great week for Trump. I caught just a little bit of Rush Limbaugh's monologue on Friday where he declared the 2020 Democratic primary is over. Joe Biden has jumped out to a 30-point lead over Bernie Sanders and basically a 50-point lead over everybody else. That means, butt gig, you're not going to be the nominee. Neither are you, Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren. You know, what's her name there? Oh, there's Kamala, thinks she's a hottie Harris, and then there's Beto, the Irish Latino, and the rest of that cavalcade of clowns like Corey grabbing boys in the men's room Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand, which nobody's talking about her. Nobody's talking about any of them. Now, if you're a Bernie supporter, the fix is in again. Always a bridesmaid, never quite a bride. The fix is in. Biden hasn't really done anything, and the couple of events he's had has drawn like, 400 or 500 people. And yet, you got the media, and I believe the polling, all pushing Biden. And once again, creating this buzz that it's inevitable, it's Biden. The Democrats have picked the traditional candidate over the breakout candidate. And see, the difference between the Republicans and Democrats on this one, yeah, the Republicans initially didn't want Trump. But Trump fought and pushed past that. Can Bernie? Can Bernie push past the opposition of the party bosses? Because the party bosses made it clear. Nancy Botox Pelosi, the Chuck E. Cheese Schumers are making it clear, and I want you liberals to listen to me well. They are doing to you what the quasi-rhino conservative Christian faith and values politicians did to us. Nancy and the traditional Democrats will come out and tell you exactly what you want to hear on health care, on climate change, on gay rights and gender inclusiveness. But once they're elected, they just pacify you. If you really want your agenda, do you have what it takes to break past the polls and what the party bosses are telling you? You're going to have Joe Biden. This is going to get interesting. Next, we hear that Napoleon Dynamite is going to get his buddy Pedro in as a Democratic nominee. Vote for Pedro. All right. If you have no idea what that reference means, you got to watch the movie Napoleon Dynamite. Well, that's it. That's my weekend rant for today. If you would, please hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Smack the bell to get notification of my next rant. And to all of you mothers, have a happy Mother's Day.